Hello ladies and gentlemen, this is the Steven Hour, and we are back with another top 10 video. Today, we'll be doing my top 10 favorite teen couples from TV. Quite recently, I've been watching a lot of teen dramas, and I've been hooked on so many of them. I used to love watching them when I was a teenager, and you know, I decided because, honestly, I've been in such a top 10 craze right now, so I decided to do a list dedicated to these types of pairings. Now, I want to make a few things clear. A, I am picking teen couples. They have to be teens from high school to college. I will be accepting really around that area. I'm also taking into account chemistry and how I personally enjoyed their characters' growth. Also, even though these will mostly be from teen dramas, there is no real genre, like say if it's an action series or supernatural type stuff. Any genre is fair game. And again, these are my personal preference, my honest opinion. And and I just want to make that clear. Just because let's say your number one is not on this list doesn't mean I necessarily hate the couple. It's purely subjective. And so without further ado, let's kick off the list. We're starting, of course, with an honorable mention. The honorable mentions, I should say, go to Eric and Donna and Hyde and Jackie from That 70s Show. Yes, I decided for the honorable mention to go for two couples from That 70s Show. Honestly, these two are arguably the series' greatest couples. Now, first off, Eric and Donna. Eric is basically an adorable character. He's this nerd and really doesn't really have that much in the looks department, but really he has his anti-humor and genuinely is shown to be a good person on many occasions. And of course there is Donna, who is this hot, rebellious, almost feminist type character, or independent woman, and you think these two are so opposite, but for some reason they work. Again, That 70s Show is what the title suggests, a show that takes place in the late 70s, and is basically a sitcom. And of course there's Hyde and Jackie. Now people always preferred Jackie and Kelso pairing, but honestly, I was always more drawn to the Hyde and Jackie, because they're so polar opposites. Hyde is basically this rebellious, wrong side of the tracks type guy, and despite him being this rebel, he's shown to have a good heart deep down, and honestly rocks the looks department. And of course Jackie is this airhead, not really airhead, but the spoiled rich girl. Now, I liked how these two couples are different. It was clear that Eric and Donna were endgame, and Hyde and Jack, and basically we knew from the first episode these two were going to be a couple at some point, and for quite a while they were, and they had their ups and downs. In fact, that's how I describe both of these couples, having their ups and downs. Now, whilst Eric and Donna are a classic, these couple that instantly had spark from the beginning, Hyde and Jackie are rather different. Hyde is, again, they both hated each other, but grew to, tolerate each other because they're part of a group of friends. Eventually, they did become actual friends, and next thing you know, they become a couple. And honestly, I find this pairing to work so much better than with Jackie and Kel, so I don't know. I just didn't, get that vibe. And honestly, these two couples are so great. Now, I will be spoiling one bit. Whilst Eric and Donna, come back together, they break up the Hyde and Jackie couple. And yeah. I will be honest, there's not really that much sitcom couples on this list, except for maybe one. And I knew I had to include That 70s Show on this list, but I decided to give an honorable mention because there's these two couples. And honestly, I will be honest, these other couples I just liked and were more drawn to than these two. Not saying they're bad couples, but I don't know. You can't help with which couple you happen to like. So with that out of the way, let's kick off into the actual list. Starting at number 10 is Rory and Dean from Gilmore Girls. Basically, the Gilmore Girls is basically this girl Rory, who has a very complicated family. She has a great relationship with her mother and her grandparents. However, the family dynamic is rather mixed. She then goes to this elite school, and basically she's shown to be the smart, intelligent, but also has this witty, great dialogue chemistry with basically she's shown to be shy. And her first love in the series is Rory, Dean, who you may know played Sam on Supernatural. And of course, he now is now on the series Walker, which you can find on Stan, and that is also a good show. Now, I will be honest, out of all the pairings, I've just recently watched this show, and I'll be honest, out of all the pairings that they've had with Rory's character, I always felt that her and Dean were the more authentic, and had better chemistry. They worked better with each other. And honestly, I'm one of those group of fans that believe these two should have been the end game, because if I recall correctly, they aren't end game. Again, I'm still trying to make my way through the series, so I haven't yet fully watched the end of the series, but I absolutely love this couple immediately at first sight. These two are just so great. Now, of course, the two at some point break up, and Rory goes on to date others like Jess and Logan. All have their merits and are great, but for me, there's no replacing Rory and Dean. I also like how the characters begin to grow as the series goes on. Again, these two just work off so well with each other, and they come from a bit of different backgrounds. So I do like that, but they're not bitter about it. I absolutely love this pairing, and again, this is one of the newest ones I've just got introduced to, and again, I've still yet to finish the show, but so far I'm enjoying it, and I find it absolutely great so far. Can't see where more of this takes us, and who knows, I might even watch the continuation show, the Gilmore Girls, A Day in the Life, which is like a show that's continuing. So who knows, I might get around to that. Anyway, at number 9, Willow and Tara from Buffy the Vampire Slayer. Honestly, when I was doing this list, I knew I had to put a Buffy the Vampire Slayer couple on this list. Now, even though I was tempted to do either Buffy and Angel, or Buffy and Spike, or even Xander and Cordelia, I will be honest, out of all the couple, Willow and Tara probably take the cake for me as being the better couple. Now, when we introduced to Willow, she's the shy nerd from in the high school, and for a while she's in a relationship with Oz, played by Seth Green. Seth Green, and honestly, those two worked so well. But then Seth Green left, and Willow was heartbroken. It was also around this time where she really became more of had those like witch type powers that she was developing. And next thing you know, she befriends Tara, another shy, timid girl. And she too is a witch, or witches in training. Eventually, these two develop romantic feelings and become a lesbian couple. I will be honest, when doing this list, I was not expecting to put a lesbian couple on the list. Not saying that I've got anything against lesbians before you go immediately into the comments. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that I was surprised to put one on the list. But with that said, when looking back, I will be honest, I love this couple. The two actresses in question have such great chemistry, and honestly, these two just work really well off each other more than any other. I also like how, honestly, in Season 6, the relationship becomes tested. It's been hinted, especially, that Willow might begin to attach to magic, and Tara immediately halts on it, saying, you know, you're going a bit too far. And I like how what's the reason for Willow being stable. I also like how the relationship really benefits both. They both really become, just as Willow is becoming more of a confident, she's also empowering Tara to be just as confident. And eventually Tara, of course, is brought into the group of friends, the Scooby Gang, which is what they're effectively called. And essentially, it just worked, and essentially, the characters in this relationship really empower each other, and that's what I like about it. But, of course, in teen dramas, sadly, not everything gets a happy ending. Sadly, Tara is killed in an accident, an accidental gunshot that was meant to get Buffy accidentally killed her, and this sends Willow down the dark path to become this more evil character. And the actress who plays Willow, we buy her grief, and she transforms into this completely different character that I am absolutely shocked. Absolutely fantastic pairing. And honestly, it just goes to show that love can come from anywhere, regardless of your background or even regardless of gender. And that is really hard, you know, and that's really commendable for this series to be one of the first pioneers of an actual lesbian couple that I didn't find to either be cliche or eye-rolling. Number 8. Bruce and Selena from Gotham. Okay, I have to include... I knew at some point I was going to include some superhero couples on this list, but I knew it needed to be a teen one. And out of all the teen ones, I went with this. I'm sorry. But for me, in all of comics, Bruce Wayne's #1 soulmate has always been Selena. Selena Kyle, for me, will always be his soulmate. The two come... Again, these two are another classic opposite attract. Both come from different backgrounds. Selena is essentially a cat burglar, a thief who grew up on the streets and learned to defend herself. She also takes the name Cat, which is a nice little reference to the comic, to her earlier appearances when she was only called the Cat and later became the Catwoman. And this is also around the time where Bruce is really starting to, after the tragic event of his parents' death in the crime alley, the classic origin story, he's going through that process. Eventually in season 1, the two properly meet, and instantly there was a spark immediately since the first meeting. And I like how eventually Bruce was slowly developing to become this more brooding, and in many ways the two complement each other really well. And what I like about it is that many cast is picking up on that the two are clearly attracted to one another. I absolutely love that. So great moment. Of course, but just like I think so far with many on the list, the relationship sadly doesn't end well. Again, they go through their ups and downs. Season 3, especially, where they hit speed bump. And honestly, at the point, I think they really started dating, I would say, kind of in Season 3, but really I would say in Season 4, when Bruce went through a downward spiral. And honestly, these two are just fantastic. My favorite scene is still in the series, when in Season 5, they're on, like, that sort of date. I'm sorry. I cracked at that. Sorry, it was just something I've always been waiting for. And honestly, I also like how it starts, like, again, they come from different backgrounds, but when Bruce really starts to become a fighter, the two, like, work so well, like, as a real fighting couple. These two are just great. Absolutely fantastic. And honestly, even though this ain't the chronological Batman and Catwoman, this is a completely different interpretation, but it still stays true to the roots of the characters in the comics, and I absolutely love that. And again, they're slowly becoming those characters at the same time. So and I like the aspect that these two were already on a destined path to become, their comic book counterparts. I love that. Number 7. Pacey and Joey from Dawsons Creek. I will be honest, just like the Gilmore Girls, I have yet to really fully watch Dawsons Creek. I think I stopped around, maybe some point after the 3rd, maybe 4th season, somewhere. Definitely know I stopped. And honestly, Pacey and Joey's relationship, I think, is the best on the show. It's another classic case opposite attract. They're shown to not really quite like each other as well. Both come from pretty dysfunctional families, which is something they have in common. Joey, background, the dysfunctional family, and as a result, the two just seem to work together, and it was honestly quite surprising because the relationship was slowly beginning to form, and I loved it. The actors in question for some reason, make it work. I don't know how. Because honestly, it's a classic case of friend zone. So I'm surprised it managed to make it work, but make it work believably. Something I think very few shows rarely, if ever, did. I love this. Again, I just probably need to go back and finish watching the show to really see how this relationship ends. And from what I'm told, they are not endgame. So it's really sad. But I definitely know they're far better. This pairing was far better than what Dawson had. Because I'll be honest, even though I watched the show, I will be honest, when rethinking or rewatching some episodes now, I agree, Dawson was not the best boyfriend. I'd argue he's probably one of the worst boyfriends in TV history. He's right up there, maybe in the top 3. So these two just, for me, worked really well, and I think they are the best couple on that show. Number 6. Jughead and Betty from Riverdale. I'll be honest, when I watched Riverdale, I was kind of not really talked into it, but my younger sister was always talking about the show and how good it was. Eventually, I just got so bored, I decided to sit down and watch, and I was blown away. Jughead, and it's another classic case of wrong side of the tracks. Jughead comes from a very broken family. He lives on the wrong side of town, basically lives poor, and is essentially the sort of greaser type archetype. He comes from a very broken family. Betty is the classic, the girl next door, and was shown to be pining for Archie. Now, eventually, and these two were friends, but for some reason there was always a great but when I saw that kiss, I was shocked, and I'll be honest, I felt for a minute it might have come out of nowhere, but after the next 2 episodes, I bought the relationship and found it to be arguably one of the best on the show. I mean, Cheryl and Tony were great. Even though Archie and Veronica were great as well, I will be honest, Archie is probably not the best character on the show, because he can sometimes be a bit flawed and be impulsive. He has a good heart, but he's shown to sometimes be a little bit selfish. And honestly, these two work. Like that date when they go into the movie theater, I'm sorry, I was huging for that. And I also showed just how much they really empower each other. And again, I also like really the drama, and when it comes to and this show has a lot of detective work, and honestly, these two are the best detectives out of the whole group and work off each other so well. Really do. I also really gotta give credit to just how they were written to be a bit more realism. Again, they look like your archetypes. Betty should be the dumb, is blonde, is the classic good girl next door, should be the classic, blonde bimbo, but she's not. Jughead should honestly look like the school outcast and even bully, but he's shown to be incredibly smart and intelligent and honestly really good. And the relationship also has Jughead evolve from being the school outsider to honestly a really well-rounded character. I love it, and I think honestly, Jughead and Betty are the best couple on the show. Sadly, right now, the show is still going, but from what I remember, quite currently, they're broken up. And honestly, I don't know where the show's going to end, but I definitely know for a fact, Jughead and Betty for me, are endgame. I want them to be the endgame when the series finally wraps up. For me, no other couple on that show is far better than these two. They're just my absolute favorite. Seth and Summer take the number 5 from the OC. I watched the OC, all of it, and it was fun. It was one of my first TV show reviews. And honestly, it's another classic case of the guy being the nerd, Seth Cohen, and Summer being the popular high school girl, but rather intelligent. I like how the fact that Seth have always had a crush on her for nearly his entire life, but was never really part of that group of circle to really communicate until Ryan comes to town. Seth's dad kind of brings him in to look up, brings him in as he's just like to obviously make sure that he's taken care of, because he's like that type of lawyer that makes sure like these kids get back on the right track. And immediately, Ryan and Seth bond and become best friends. Immediately, adopted brother types. And ironically, Ryan, how he interacts with many of the school scene helps Seth really become more confident, and eventually the relationship between Seth and Summer really, click. Really click, and I loved a minute of it. It's a classic, again, it's another classic case of opposite attract. The girl's the nice, popular one, a little bit shallow, and Seth is the classic high school nerd that gets picked on. But the couple just work for me, especially. And I absolutely love how Seth was written. Interesting fact, the actor who played Seth actually had a small role, first appeared on Gilmore Girls before he went to this. Again, it's another classic case of opposite attract, but there's a reason why those couples we love so much, because in a way it complements each other, and honestly, it's another favorite of mine. And I can't help but love this couple. It's absolutely well written, and I like how the ending. They get spoiler alert, they get married at the end of the series, and I just loved every minute of it. And honestly, these two are the best couple on that show. And I like how, yes, they're going through ups and downs. Yes, they dated other people, but I like how they brought them back, and I loved it. And unlike other couples on this list, these two were endgame at the end of the series, and I like that we got that. Number 4. Justin and Jessica from 13 Reasons Why. Arguably 13 Reasons Why I'd say is one of the most progressive teen dramas in history. For those who don't know, 13 Reasons Why was based off the book of the same name, and it's a Netflix original, one of Netflix's greatest TV shows. And basically, the series revolves around Clay Jensen, who, after the tragic suicide of this girl he happened to have a crush on, he comes into possession of 13 tapes, or of some tapes. And in those 12 tapes, and in these tapes, she lays out a person responsible that led her down the path to committing suicide. And Justin was essentially Hannah, that was the girl in question, first kiss, and Jessica was at one point Hannah's best friend, but then the relationship sort of soured over time. Eventually, the two start dating, and I generally like this. Again, the show shows these characters to be far more complex. Justin is again shown to become from a poor, bad family, and is best friends with Bryce. Bryce, like they've been friends since school began. Eventually, the relationship sort of falls out, and Jessica tragically has one of the most gruesome, honestly horrible things that you could ever do to a TV character. I won't say it here because honestly, just the thought of it repulses me. Is one of the most vile acts you could do. Now, and of course, like most, they have their ups and downs. They've had their dramas. But honestly, these two, I think, are the best couple on that show. And I also like how the characters evolve from their season 1. Again, not everyone is shown as their archetype. They're not shown in black or white, but we're given more sides to their character. And we get to see more of their character. Sadly, of course, like most on this list, and I've realized a really occurring theme, most of these aren't happy ever afters. Justin sadly dies of AIDS, and it's a horrible act, because once he's finally got his life back on track, because again, he's suffered drug addictions, he's suffered really some terrible ups and downs, but once you think he's finally getting his life back on track, and he's finally about to reunite with Jessica, he, contracts HIV and dies. He was too lately diagnosed and passes. It's one of the most one of the most tragic things on that show. And honestly, this show, despite being a teen drama, gives us realistic deaths. And honestly, really shines a light on serious teen issues that, to this day, we as a society need to address. We need to look at it, and we need to find ways to prevent it. So I really love the message that show really gives, and basically just how it humanizes so many characters. This could be because this show could have been cliche. These characters could have been cliche, and could be criticized for being too drama-y, you know, like. But no, they do it realistically. They don't shun us away from it. We're shown it realistically, and honestly, I love these two. And again, these characters are shown to be something that I think other teen dramas on this list aren't. Real. It was shown they are actually legit real, and I loved every minute of it. Number 3. Cory and Topanga from Boy Meets World. Oh my god, I had to include a few sitcom couples on this list. Cory and Topanga were high school friends, sweetheart, and eventual sweethearts. I absolutely love the chemistry here, and honestly, these two are just great. And also like how basically the premise of the show is Cory learning to face the world, and Topanga is his life partner to that path to the real world. So I love that. They go through their many ups and downs. They go through many twists and turns, but I loved every minute of it. This is a really great couple. I loved every minute of it. And of course, they're still shown to be Endgame in the spin-off show that has come out years later, Girl Meets World, where they're married, have kids. This couple has a fantastic happy ending, something I thought we never get. Number 2. Josh and Mindy from Drake and Josh. Oh my god. I just recently discovered this show, I think 2 years ago, and I absolutely love this pairing. Josh is your classic smart kid, slightly bullied because he was a bit overweight. He currently has a stepbrother named Drake. And Drake is the complete opposite. He's, thin, fit, great at guitar, but also shown to be a bit of a slacker and quite the ladies' man. Josh didn't have that. But then comes Mindy. Now, Mindy is not introduced as, the person he has a crush on. Mindy is introduced as his high school rival. And honestly, it was shown that it was just going to be that. But then when she came back, it was shown that she had developed feelings for him, and vice versa, and the two begin dating. The two complement each other, but they decide to break off because of basically Josh feeling insecure about being around her because he feels that she's always the smarter one. And for a while, it's always a hint, will they or won't they get back together? Eventually they do, and it's one of my favorite moments when they do. What was the intended finale, they get back together. They reciprocate, and basically, it's a happy ending. These two are absolutely great. I like how this relationship started out. There was no hints of these two were going to be endgame, or were going to be in a relationship. It was, it was a rivalry, and almost, like a school rivalry, which I like. This is something that was completely different on this list, and still is. I love this pairing so much. It's so great. I give them the number 2. But of course, we're at number 2, so there's got to be a number 1. So the number 1 goes to Scott and Allison from Teen Wolf, my favorite all-time teen couple ever. In the show was based off the Michael J. Fox movie of the same name, but though drastically redone differently. It was distributed on MTV, and it's arguably one of many people's favorite teen dramas. Here, Scott here, he is portrayed as being this nerd loser, but after getting bitten by a werewolf, he suddenly developed werewolf powers. Just whilst this has happened, a new girl comes to town named Allison, and she's revealed to be the daughter of this hunter family, of these werewolf slayers, hunters that basically, kill anything supernatural but live by a code. And automatically, this creates a bit of conflict. The two have such great chemistry and work really off. Obviously, there's really only 2 couples that really kept me interested in the show. And this was the one that always kept me coming back to see how the relationship would progress and what drama they would get into. And honestly, it's great. This relationship kind of gives me a Peter Parker vibe. Has this guy, guy with powers, dual identity type, or kind of dual identity, and meets this girl, and is shown not to be your standard bimbo, shown to be very intelligent, very bright, but also very resourceful. The two complement each other, and I say they are the best couple on the show, and I loved every minute of it. The two work so well off each other and are my favorites of the show. And as a result of that, I give the #1 spot to Scott and Allison. Sadly, the relationship, of course, doesn't end well. It ends tragically with Allison's death and really affected the mood of the show, as she was a main character getting killed. Again, but there was, of course, plans for her not to die, but she was to get bitten by Scott in order to save her, and she would become a werewolf. And again, the creator said they were meant to be endgame. I really wish if her character could have properly returned, maybe re-resurrected back from the dead and came back in the next episode, in maybe the final season, because these guys should have been endgame. I'm sorry, but they should have. They were the best couple. So I give them #1. And there we have it. Those were my top 10 teen couples from TV. Do you agree with this list? Who is your #1? Who else would you have included on the list? Please, write your opinions down in the comments. And until next time, this has been the Steven Hour. And ladies and gentlemen, so long for now.